Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss and start a new topic that is about the sources of social policy. When we talk about the sources of social policies, it refers to the origins from which social policies are developed, shaped, and implemented. Now, these sources are formal, such as laws, legislations, regulations. It could also be cultural norms and public opinions. The sources are important because actually these policies, when we talk about the sources, it gives a sense of direction. They form a base in which manner, in what manner the policies have to be created. It gives a framework, it gives an outline, a framework where the policies are being shaped, designed. Also helps in analyzing how these policies would influence or would impact the larger population. It gives an insight into it gives an insight in to the fact that what kind of policies and for which population the policies are being framed. So there are certain sources of policy making. If they are actually there, three, four. If you talk about the constitution, the fundamental rights, directive principle of state policies, as well as human rights. So it is important to understand that what would be the key elements, or how these sources, or how fundamental rights or directive principles of state policy as well as human rights are all linked in helped fundamental rights, or DPSP, Directive Principles in State Policies and Human Rights, helps in shaping social policies. If you talk about government and legislation, if you talk about government and legislations, of course, there are formal laws and statutes. These are often, social policies are often rooted in legislation which have been passed by national and state or local governments. And these laws are related to healthcare, education, social security, and welfare. And these are considered to be the primary source of policy making system. And there are government agencies. Various government departments and agencies are also responsible for developing and implementing policies. For example, the Department of Health might craft policies related to health. The Department of Education would come up with educational policies which would look into a certain important part. In executive orders and decrees, in some cases, the executive orders and decrees issued by the head of the state, maybe the president or prime minister, it can also serve as a source of social policy, especially which matters related to requiring any kind of urgent action or reaction. Then there are certain international organizations like United Nations. The United Nations and its agencies, such as the World Health Organizations and international labor laws, even IMF, International Monetary Fund, or World Bank, they influence social policies through treaties, conventions, and recommendations on issues like human rights, labor standards, and public health. So, in a way, any international declarations or covenants which has been signed by a particular country, the recommendations, these are also incorporated in a country's policy making system, or in the form of laws, or any amendments or any changes which can be done in the legislations and rules. Then World Bank internationally, these organizations also influences social policy in various developing countries through funding and structural adjustment programs which should include social policy components. So European Union, in Europe, the EU plays a very significant role in shaping social policies across member states through regulations, directives, and funding programs which is related to social welfare, employment, and health. Then political parties and ideologies, party platforms, and political movements. Political parties often develop social policies proposals as part of their platforms, as part of their agenda, or as part of their mandate or manifesto when during the time of before or during the elections. And these proposals are influenced by parties' ideology, that is, whether it is conservatism, liberalism, or socialism, and they serve as a guide for policy making when the party is in power. So the political parties or the political platform is not particularly creating social policies, but they suggest, they recommend, they bring about certain suggestive measures, affirmative actions. So it is a kind of a proposal, and these proposals may be taken up as a form of a bill or a draft, which would be reflecting that party's ideology when they are in power or when they are at the helm of affairs, when they are making policy. So it's just a proposal part of it. It's just not they are they would have a manifesto, or they would have a certain reference point or agenda. The political movements, social policy is also or they can also emerge from broader political movements, talking about or bringing about any advocating social change, such as the civil rights movements, labor movements, or farmer unions, farmer movements, environmental movements, any reform movements. These are also certain movements would be there. Public opinion in civil society, these are the certain sources apart from the DPSP, fundamental rights and human rights, which we'll be discussing at length and breadth. So if you talk about public opinion in civil society, public attitudes and beliefs about any societal issues or social issues can significantly influence the development of social policies. The governments may respond to public needs and demands for the changes. In fact, the government sometimes succumb to public demand and public interest, whether it is about education or welfare or healthcare measures. So any changes which the public would demand, and if it is in the interest of the larger population, the government may respond to those public demands and make necessary changes in the various policies or welfare measures. So advocacy groups and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, advocacy groups, and charities or voluntary institutions and associations, organizations, they also play a very crucial role in shaping any social policies by lobbying, raising awareness, and providing research and evidence to support policy changes. The media too can influence, whether it is a print media or it is an electronic media or via any mode. Today you also have social media also. So it can influence social policies by highlighting social issues, shaping public opinion, and holding policy makers accountable to make certain policies in a particular manner. Then academic research and think tanks, universities and research institutions. Academic research provide evidence-based insights into social causes and into social issues, informing the development of effective social policies. So research in fields like sociology, economics, and public health is particularly influential, and they people look into these universities and institutions. They take into consideration, the committee is formed. They take committees are formed. They take expert opinions or people of high repute and people of high merit are involved in the discussions and deliberations of creating or making any viable policies. Then think tanks. If we talk about think tanks, of course, Planning Commission was initially, when post-independence Planning Commission was formed in order to look into the developmental aspect of making policies of the country. But after 2012, there was this Niti Aayog, which is considered as a think tank, where policy-oriented research organizations, where these think tanks, they often produce reports and recommendations on social policies issues, and they would have a significant influence on public policy debates and government decisions. In fact, these think tanks decides or determines sometimes the course or the discourse of any policy measures or policy prescriptions to be taken in a country. So they provide suggestive measures, recommendations, suggestions in order to understand or in order to make to bring about effective and efficient policy. Historical precedents and tradition, uh, you know, there are certain social policies that are also influenced by the past policies, with lessons learned from previous implementations, shaping new approaches. Historical precedents can also create a framework for continuity in social policies or for any changes. There is always an element of rigidity. There's always an element of flexibility in policy. So what has been done in the past, if any past policies had proved to be effective and efficient, it gives a precedence to other policies which could be shaped in that manner, and thus it helps in the continuous which results in a continuous and prolonged positive effect of social policies. Cultural norms and traditions, cultural values and traditions, they can also be a source of policy which would influence what is acceptable or what is desirable in areas of such as family policy, gender roles, and welfare provisions. Economic factors, economic conditions, the state of the economy, including factors like unemployment, inflation, and economic growth, can drive the development of social policies. Economic necessities often lead to increased demand for social safety nets, and the market forces, that is, the private sector and market dynamics, also tremendously influences the discourse of social policy, particularly in the areas of healthcare, education, housing, etc., where private parties play a significant role. Then, judicial decisions and judicial matters. Court rulings in many countries, the judiciary can influence social policy through rulings on issues related to human rights, equality, and accessibility to various services. So, landmark our court cases also set precedents that shape the future policies. So, in a way that the sources of social policies are diverse and diverse and interconnected, thereby reflecting a complex interplay of governmental, societal, economic, and international influences. Effective social policy making requires an understanding of these sources to create policies that are informed, responsive, and aligned with the needs and values of the society. Now, these were the basic important channels like we had discussed, and now further I would look into those parts which are more crucial in shaping or in designing these various social policies or health policies or economic policies. And there are three important means, or I would say three important sources of policies: fundamental rights in social policy, directive principles of state policy, as well as human rights. Here, I would like to say that directive principles of state policies are not policies, but these are merely guidelines or reference point, or these are the those policies which have been enshrined in the constitution, where the state may or may not, the state has a prerogative to provide these basic welfare measures to the people or not, depending upon the state's economy, depending upon the state's resources. So, if you talk about Indian subcontinent, the relationship between fundamental rights and social policy is deeply embedded in the country's constitutional framework, which is commitment to social justice. And the Indian Constitution enshrines a set of fundamental rights which are essential and which are mandatory for the protection and the development and growth of individual. It gives them the right, the choices. It protects them from, any adverse people, the citizen of the country, from being exploited or for being oppressed. So, social policies are designed to ensure that these rights are realized for all citizens, particularly the marginalized and disadvantaged. And if you talk about the fundamental rights, these are justiciable rights, these are enforceable rights, and the violation of any of these rights can lead to serious repercussions, and fundamental rights, as we know, these can be challenged in the court. So, the fundamental rights, as enshrined in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and which guarantees to all citizens, when you talk about the fundamental rights, it's a guarantee, it is a protection net, it's a safeguard net which is given to the individual while living in a society freely and democratically, practicing and professing his religion or his opinion, or expressing his opinion. Like right to equality, if you talk about right to equality, Article 14 to 18, equality before law prohibits discriminatory practices on the grounds of religion, caste, creed, place. Like, if one example would be abolition of untouchability, which aims to eliminate any caste-based discrimination and ensure social equality. So, when you're talking about right to equality, everybody is entitled to have equal opportunity, to have equal accessibility, whether it is in terms of education, like one of the acts, Right to Education Act, which has come into existence in 2009. It gives each and every individual an opportunity to to be educated, to be enrolled in a school till the age of 14 years. It has been made free and compulsory. So the equality, when you talk about equality, equal status have been given to the individuals under this fundamental right, so that it could protect that individual, it could safeguard, and has been enshrined, or has been entrusted with equal opportunity. Then right to freedom, Article 19 and 22, freedom of speech and expressions ensures the right to express the opinions freely. We are living in a democratic country, and democracy tells us that we have the choices, the liberty, the freedom to express our opinions, to express our dissatisfaction, if there are any, to that too in a very peaceful and in a very peaceful manner. It also talks about that whatever the freedom as an individual and as an adult, we should be also mindful about the freedom and the liberties which have been given to us. So, freedom of assembly, assemble peacefully, to form associations, and to move freely throughout the territory of India. This freedom has also given the right to the individual. This right to freedom has given the individual to to move freely from one place to another place within the territory of India. The person, whenever he has the opportunity, he has the freedom to build houses, he has the freedom to gain employment in any parts of the country by virtue of being the citizen of a country. So he have also he could peacefully form associations, institutions, any such groups, and could freely move from one place to another. Then right against exploitation, that is Article 23 to 24, prohibition of human trafficking and forced labor, protecting individuals from exploitation and abuse in the forms of various laws, legislations, like child protection laws are there, women protection laws are there, migrant protection laws are there, people working in economic establishments, factories, institutions, laws and legislations are meant to regulate their working hours, their pay scale, the social insurance and social security. So these, there is a right against exploitation which protects and safeguards the social, economic, political, cultural rights of the individual would be included in it. So prohibition of child labor, which bans the employment of children in hazardous occupation. So it safeguards the individual, it helps the individual from any discrimination, from any exploitation or oppression. Then we have right to freedom of religion, Article 25 and 20 till 28, freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion is entrusted to the citizen of a country. He or she may exercise, profess, practice, propagate his religion without hurting the sentiments, without communalizing the religious feelings towards each other. It is more of being tolerant towards each other, more of diversity and respect towards each other. So this freedom of religion, which has been given to every citizen to profess and practice his own religion, fear, irrespective of any fear or any such kind of pressure or oppression. Then right to manage religious affairs, it protects the autonomy of religious communities. So every community, every religious communities has been entrusted with this autonomy, that they can exercise, they can practice, they can celebrate the festivals, their religious duties and system, the religious duties, religious culture, tradition, festivals, customs, etc. They can protect and safeguard their religious communities and religious sentiments. Then cultural and educational rights, which is from Article 29 to 30. This is the protection of interest of minorities, ensures the right of minorities to preserve their culture, language and script, and right of minorities to establish and administer education institutions. This particularly focus, when we talk about the cultural education rights of not only of the minorities, that it is giving equal opportunity to minorities. They have been enshrined, or they have been entrusted with establishing their own education institutions, which would look into the welfare of such groups. Then the right to constitutional remedies, right to approach Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental rights through writs like habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, etc. All these, they have this right to constitutional remedies, and under the provision of constitutional remedies, they can easily approach any of the lower court to the higher courts. Then social policy in India. When if you talk about the policies in India which would addresses issues such as poverty, inequality, education, health, and social securities, these policies which aims to translate the fundamental rights guaranteed by the constitutions into tangible benefits for the people. And some of the few fundamental rights in the line of social policy interest are like, if you talk about right education policy and right to education, that is the right of children to free and compulsory education act of 2009 ensures that every child has the accessibility to quality education without discrimination. And there are certain government schemes, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and midday meal scheme to improve enrollment, retention, and learning outcomes. If you talk about right to life, health policy and the right to life, which includes the right to live with dignity, and which has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to include the right to health. In fact, the connections related to the policies connection would be National Health Mission and Ayushman Bharat, which aims to provide affordable healthcare to all, particularly the poor. And these policies, they focus on reducing maternal and child mortality, improving access to essential medicines, and expanding health infrastructure. Then welfare policies and right to equality. The right to equality article ensures that everyone has equal accessibility to opportunities, and it prohibits discrimination. And so for that matter, there are certain policies such as the reservation policies for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, other backward classes in education and employment, which aims to addresses any historical injustices and providing equitable opportunities to people. So social welfare schemes like Manrega schemes or and Manrega scheme which guarantees employment, or rather which provides employment to rural household, trying to provide economic equality. When you talk about social security and the right against exploitation, again it prohibits forced labor and child labor. And the social policy relation that the child labor project and the prohibition of child marriage act aims to provide protect children from any kind of employee exploitation. In fact, various social security schemes like the Employees Provident Fund and Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojana, it provides financial security to workers and promote financial inclusion. Then policies, housing policies, and the right to adequate housing, in which is interpreted to, if you talk about right to life, which is actually equated with the right to live a decent life and with proper housing facilities. And under this, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which aims to provide affordable housing to all, particularly urban and the rural poor. And this policy seeks to ensure that every family has safe and dignified living space. In fact, there is the housing policies which has been there, which has been created for affordable housing facilities for the urban as well as rural population. Food security and the right to food, right to life also encompasses the right to food, which is recognized by the Supreme Court. The National Food Security Act 2013 ensures the availability of food at affordable prices to around two-thirds of India's population. And the public distribution system and various nutrition programs are also essential components of this policy. Now, in concluding this part of fundamental rights, or rather as a source of as a social policy, it can be said that the fundamental rights provides the legal and ethical foundation for social policies that aims to promote social justice, equity, and well-being of all citizens. In fact, social policies are the tools through which these rights are realized, ensuring the individuals to have accessibility to education, health, housing, social security, and protection from any kind of exploitation. The ongoing challenge for India is now to effectively implement these policies in a manner that fully respects and promotes the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution. Now, moving ahead, I would like to talk about directive principles of state policy and how these are interconnected to the creation of social policy. Directive principles of state policies, again, it is enshrined in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, and it also plays a very significant and an important role in shaping social policy in India. These principles, though non justiciable, that is, they are not legally enforceable in a court of law, are fundamental in the governance of the country, and they serve as a guideline for the central as well as for the state government to frame policies and laws and law legislations. So they aim to create a just social order, which is characterized by social, economic, and political justice. Also try and to improve the welfare of the people through DPSP, through Directive Principle of State Policy. The state is actually obliged to look after the welfare aspects, welfare measures of the population, depending on the state's resources. Although the central government takes an active part in it, but it is state responsibility to entrust, which has been entrusted with the broader objective and with the broader agenda to look after the needs, the welfare needs of the people, to provide them that kind of platform where the people feel safe, secured, and protected from any kind of exploitation, discrimination practices, or any kind of mistreatment of mistreatment from any other groups, or from any particular individuals or communities, or from. So it talks about that harmony, brotherhood, peaceful coexistence should be ensured. The state should have the responsibility, or rather to take care of its own people, whether it's minorities, whether it's a marginalized vulnerable populations such as the elderly, women and children, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. And the state, with its allocation of resources, the state's responses through through these welfare measures and means, you actually tend to redistribute the resources, the wealth of the nation amongst the most vulnerable population. Now, the directive principles of state policies are being broadly characterized into various parts. That is, first, social and economic welfare. Article 38 says that it is directed to promote the welfare of the people by ensuring a social order in which justice, whether it is social, economic, and political, shall inform all the institutions of national life. Article 39 states that the state strive to ensure that citizens, men and women, equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood, and that the ownership and control of material resources are distributed to serve the common good. And it also seeks to prevent the concentration of wealth and means of production. Whereas Article 39A promotes equal justice, and it provides free legal aid to ensure that opportunities for securing justice are not denied to any citizen by reason or of economic or other disabilities. Now, when you talk about health and nutrition, Article 47, it is the duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living of its people to improve public health. This includes prohibiting the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health. Educational and cultural rights, which is Article 45 and 46, where the state is empowered to, or rather, state endeavors to provide early childhood care and education for all the children until they complete the age of 6 and 14 years. And the state is also directed to promote the educational and economic interest of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and the weaker sections of society, and to protect them from social injustice and exploitation. Agrarian reforms and workers' rights. Under Article 43, the state should strive to secure living wages and decent working conditions for workers, ensuring that all workers enjoy a good minimum standard of living. The state 40 Article 48 states that the state is obliged, is encouraged to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. If you talk about the environmental protection, Article 48 says that the state shall endeavors to promote and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. Now, impact of the directive principles on state policy. Now, the directive principles have significantly influenced the formulation and implementation of social policies, and here are a few aspects of it. Welfare programs and poverty alleviation. There are policies and programs inspired by directive principles. Various poverty alleviation program has been initiated, has been implemented, like Manrega, which provides a legal guarantee of employment to rural households, and public distribution system to ensure food security. And when we talk about economic justice, it also talks about, DPSP had led to the implementation of progressive taxation and land reform policies, which would reduce, which aims at reducing income inequality and redistributing wealth in an orderly manner. Then education policies are there. Right to education, the influence of Article 45 and 46 can be seen in the Right to Education Act, that is 2009, which makes elementary education a fundamental right for the children up to the age of 6 to 14 years, which is a free and compulsory. And then along with the RTE Act, there are several measures which has been taken in the area of elementary education, primary education, even higher education. There have been policies starting from 1968 till National Education Policies 2020, which has paved the way for a more holistic, all-round development of students with the most current new education policies. So government schemes like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, midday meal scheme also stem from these principles. In fact, midday meal schemes looked into caters to two aspects of, two objectives. One, to improve the nutrition status, and secondly, to enhance the enrollment ratio and to reduce the dropout ratio, particularly of the girl child. Then there are special scholarship programs and affirmative action policies in education institutions have taken up to support the educational advancement of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and other disadvantaged groups. Then, if you talk about the health and nutrition aspect, public health initiatives, National Health Mission, and other programs like Janani Suraksha Yojana, Ayushman Bharat reflects the state's responsibility under Article 47 to improve public health and raise the level of nutrition. Then there are certain nutritional programs such as the Integrated Child Development Services Scheme, which provides nutrition, education, and health services to children under 6 years of age and pregnant and lactating mothers. Then, if you talk about the right to labor welfare and workers' rights and labor welfare rights, the labor policies under Article 43 and 43A have influenced labor welfare policies, including the Minimum Wages Act, the Maternity Benefit Act, and the Employees Provident Fund Act, which seeks to ensure fair wages, decent working conditions, and social security for workers. The other land reform movements have also taken place. Recent labor codes, which consolidate various labor laws, also reflects the ongoing effort to secure the rights and welfares of the workers. Then there are certain environmental policies, environmental legislations. Article 48A has led to the enactment of laws such as the Environmental Protection Act of 1986, then Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which aims to safeguard the environment and biodiversity. Then there is a sustainable development part of it, that is various sustainable development has also been initiated. Various policies promoting sustainable agricultural, renewable energy, and conservation efforts are directly influenced by these environmental devices. Then there is legal aid and justice, access to justice. In line with Article 39A, the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 were enacted to provide free legal services to the poor and weaker sections of the society, ensuring that justice is not denied due to economic or social disadvantages. So, after the Delhi, after a very brief discussions of how fundamental rights and DP directive principles and state policies are interconnected to social policies. So, these directive principles of state policies, it also provide a moral and ethical framework for the Indian government to guide its policy making system, which, while not enforceable by law, they serve as a beacon for formulating social policies aiming at achieving a just, equitable, and inclusive society. Over the years, they have significantly influenced legislations and programs, helping to uplift the socio-economic conditions of millions of Indians and striving towards the constitutional visions of social justice and welfare for all. Thank you, everyone. Today, I will stop here. I had discussed two aspects of sources of social policy, that is, fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. In the next slide, I will talk about the human rights and social policy. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I have been discussing about the sources of social policy, and in continuation with my previous lectures, where I had discussed what were the various sources, like from government sectors, private institutions, private organizations, government bodies, media, print or electronic, social media. Then there are and non-governmental organizations. There had been a lot of sources of social policies in and apart from that, you I had also discussed about fundamental rights as well as directive principles. Today a little bit further discuss about the impact the directive principles of state policy has on social policies, and then I'll discuss a little bit about human rights. So the directive principles of state policies, they have a profound impact on the formulation and evolution of social policy in India. Although the directive principles, these are non-justiciable, that is, they're not enforceable by the courts. They provide essential guidelines, and they have shaped India's legislative and policy framework over the decades. It has influenced various aspects of social policy, leading to a significant improvement in the social welfare, economic equality, and the overall quality of life for all the citizens. Now, if you talk about promotion of social justice and economic equality, if you talk about promoting social justice and economic equality, it is done through land reform movements and progressive taxation. So the directive principles of state policy, under Article 38 and 39, they have been instrumental in shaping land reform policies and reducing economic inequality. So the abolition of the zamindari system and the redistribution of land to landless farmers were direct outcomes of these principles. These reforms aimed to dismantle feudal land holdings and promote social justice by ensuring that land was equally distributed amongst the peasants or among the agrarian farmers. Then Article 39 emphasizes, on prevention and concentration of wealth, led to the preventing the concentration of wealth, led to the implementation of progressive taxation policies. These policies have designed to distribute wealth and reduce the income gap between those who were the privileged one, those who are rich class, those who are affluent, and those who are less affluent. Or I would particularly say the reducing the income gap between the advantaged and disadvantaged sections of the population, or the bridging the gap between the rich and poor. There are certain development of social welfare programs, poverty alleviation programs. Since it is focusing on the welfare and well-being of the people, there are various poverty alleviation program. Then Manrega, which employ providing rural household, or providing basic income for the poor. Then the PDA system was also established. Then advancement of education, of course, RTE Act, which has given which has made a fundamental right. Then to fundamental right of all the citizen to have accessibility to educational institutions, schools up till the age of 14 years. Then support for the marginalized community, Article 46, which promotes the education and economic interest of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and other weaker sections of the populations, has led to policies such as reservations in education institutions and special scholarship program. Then health and nutritional initiatives, public health programs. Under Article 47, it is the state's responsibility to improve the public health and look up into developmental health initiatives by the state government. The national health missions, Ayushman Bharat, they were designed to provide affordable healthcare facilities, especially to those who are poor, or who cannot afford medical expenditure. Then there is a nutritional schemes like the ICDS, integrated child development schemes, and the midday meal schemes in schools, which has established to combat nutrition and improve child health, directly reflecting the goals of Article 47. Then labor laws are there. Article 3 emphasizes fair wages, decent working conditions, and the protection of workers' rights. This had led to the enactments of numerous labor laws, which include Minimum Wages Act or the Factories Act, and more recently, the consolidation of labor laws into four labor codes, which aims to ensure better working conditions and social security for workers. Then, social security schemes like Employees Provident Fund, employees state insurance, and pension schemes, which are deeply rooted in directive principles, call for a state to secure the welfare of the workers. Environmental legislations are there, then environmental protection laws and acts, Environmental Protection Act of 1986 and Wildlife Protection Act 1972. These laws aim to safeguard natural resources, promote sustainable development, and ensure a healthy environment for future generations. In fact, sustainable development initiatives has also been taken up by the government. Where policies have been created to promote renewable energy, afforestation, and sustainable agricultural practices. Legal and justice, as I mentioned, that free legal aid services has been led to the establishment of legal services authorities at the national and state levels, providing free legal to the people, ensuring justice is accessible to each and everyone, regardless of the economic status. Then PIL, the spirit of DPSP has encouraged the development of public interest litigation mechanism that allow individuals and groups to file petitions in court to protect the public interest, particularly in cases involving fundamental rights violations or social justice issues. Then empowerment of women and protection of children, gender equality initiatives has been also taken up, particularly under Article 39A and 39D, which has influenced policies aimed at empowering women, like Maternity Benefit Act and the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. These laws provide social security and protect the rights of women in various aspects of life. There are certain child protection laws also which has influenced the formulation of child protection policies, such as the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act and the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act, which aims at the children from exploitation and ensure their well-being. So, they, of course, we can say that directive principles, they serve as a guiding force for the development of social policies in India, ensuring that the government aligns with the constitutional goals of social justice, economic equality, and welfare of all people. While these principles are not enforceable by law, the influence on legislation, social programs, and policy making has been profound, thereby contributing significantly to India's progress in areas such as the education, health, labor rights, environmental protection, and social security. The ongoing challenges for Indian policymakers would be in translating these policies into effective, these principles into effective policies that would address the evolving needs of the population. Now, this was the core part of directive principles and how it is impacting. And now we'll discuss about human rights and social policy. Human rights, they also play a very significant role as a source of social policy in India, guiding the formulation and implementation of policies aimed at ensuring dignity, equality, and justice for all citizens. The Indian Constitution, which enshrines fundamental rights, aligns with international human rights standards, and serve as a foundational framework for social policies in the country. These rights not only shape the legal landscape, but also inspire and direct social policy initiatives, which is aimed at addressing any social, economic, and cultural issues. Now, key aspects of human rights as a source of social policy in India: constitutional rights as human rights. Fundamental rights, as I already mentioned, that part Article 3, these fundamental rights enshrined in the Indian Constitution reflect core human rights principles which are central to the development of social policies, like right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. And when you talk about human rights and social justice, directive principles and state policies also has given certain, also the TPSP also reflects certain human rights principles such as the right to work, educational, public assistance, and social security measures. So these principles, they guide the creation of social policies that seek to realize these rights progressively. Now, if you look into the social justice part, human rights principles are embedded in social justice policies that aim to reduce inequalities, promote affirmative action, and uplift disadvantaged groups such as the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward classes. Reservations have been made in education and employment, for instance, which are designed to ensure equal opportunities and addressing any historical injustice. International human rights treaties and conventions. If you talk about the international human rights and conventions, India is a signatory to various international human rights treaties, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. These treaties influence the development of domestic social policies that align with global human rights standards. If you talk, then National Human Rights Commission, which was established in 1993, it plays a very significant role, pivotal role in monitoring the implementation of human rights and influencing social policies. It provides recommendations to the government on various social issues, such as the police reforms, child labor, and the rights of marginalized communities. There are specific social policies guided by human rights, like Right to Education Act, National Food Security Act, Manrega, which provides employment and protection of women from domestic violence. Then Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, judicial interpretations and social policies, public integration and expansion of rights. So at this point of time, I would try to conclude that human rights serve as a critical source of social policy, guiding the development of policies aimed at achieving social justice, equality, and well-being of all citizens. The Indian constitutions, together with the national human rights treaties, provides a robust framework that influence a wide range of policies. And these policies are designed to protect fundamental rights, address inequalities, and ensure that all individuals have accessibility to basic necessities and opportunities. The ongoing challenge is to effectively implement these policies, thereby ensuring that human rights of all citizens are upheld in practice. That was all about my presentation. Thank you. And I will take up the next part of the presentation, next part of the lecture, that I will start with the new topic. That is, I will start with the models and approaches to social policy. Thank you, everyone.